and then we will get an update from Jay Boast on emergency management operations. And after this, we will move straight to the media QA period. So for the media QA, as always, I will be prioritizing NWT outlets, and you guys will get a chance to ask 2 questions each. And after we're done with you, we'll open it up to Southern media, and hopefully everyone gets a chance to ask all of their questions today. So for our panel, I'm just going to paste it into the chat as well so that you have the names and titles of our panelists. Okay, so I just threw that into the chat right here. So here's our panel. Shane Thompson, Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Municipal and Community Affairs. Julie Green, Minister of Health and Social Services. Mayor Rebecca Alty for the City of Yellowknife. Sheila Bassi-Kellett, City Manager for Yellowknife. Kieran Testart, Emergency Operations Director, Yellowknife's Dene First Nation. Jay Boast, Emergency Management Organization Information Officer for the Department of Municipal and Community Affairs. Mike Westwick, Wildfire Information Officer for the Department of Environment and Climate Change. John McDonald, Deputy Minister for the Department of Education, Culture and Employment. William McKay, Deputy Minister for the Department of Finance. Pamela Strand, Deputy Minister for the Department of Industry, Tourism and Investment. James Fulford, Deputy Incident Commander for Emergency Management Organization. Robert Tordiff, Assistant Deputy Minister, Executive and Indigenous Affairs. Kimberly Riles, CEO for Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority. Claudia Kraft, Territorial Medical Director for Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority. Mandy Bolstad, Assistant Deputy Minister for the Department of Justice. Jeffrey Edison, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister for the Department of Infrastructure. Corporal Matt Halstead, RCMP. Corey Strang, CEO and President of NTPC. Imran Khan, CFO of Northwest Health. And all those names, once again, are pasted in that chat. And with that, I will turn it over to Minister Thompson for opening remarks.
Sorry about that. I'm having some technical difficulties. Good afternoon, and thank you for all being here today. Yesterday, the City of Yellowknife and Yellowknife Dene First Nations announced a tentative date of Wednesday, September 6th, for residents to begin returning to Deda, Delo, and Yellowknife. The GNWT intends to change the evacuation order for Ingham Trail to an evacuation alert at the same time as Deda, Delo, and Yellowknife order is changed to an alert. Sorry about that. This is excellent news, and the GNWT is looking forward to welcoming residents back home. Our team across government are working hard to prepare for your return. There is a lot of work that must be done to ensure that a basic level of service and support is available for you when you get home. As we work to prepare for an organized and safe return home, we ask residents to stay where they are until the evacuation order is lifted on Wednesday, September 6th at noon. Please do not drive back towards the NWT Alberta border until Wednesday, September 6th. There are no supports available in northern Alberta for evacuees considering moving north to wait for the order to be lifted. Alberta won't be accepting new or transferred registrations of evacuees in northern communities. On your drive home, you will be responsible for your own food, place to stay, and other things. For those who need to take a re-entry flight home, we have a registration process available online and by phone for people to use. Residents who need a flight can register by visiting the GNWT public safety websites, where they will find a link to the online registration form. If the web is hard for you, you can call 1-888-383-4830 between 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Again, the number you can call is 1-888-383-4830 between 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily to register. To register yourself and your family. We have officials here this afternoon to answer more questions about how this process will work. While this is a good news for Yellowknifers and residents of Detta and Elo, we recognize the residents of the communities of Hay River, Fort Smith, Kikisa, Caladici First Nation Enterprise remains away from home. Since the evacuation orders were in place, the MACA regional offices have been in ongoing contact with most community government leadership and or administration. We continue to have cooperative planning discussions about a variety of matters, including reentry and recovery. As part of this process, MAC has advised them that once the fire conditions permit, we will remove evacuation order at the request of the community government to provide for reentry and in some communities start the cleanup and recovery process. Our teams are still working very hard to fight the fire outside your communities, and our priority is to get you home as soon as it's safe. We ask residents from those South Slave communities to please stay where you are rather than traveling to Yellowknife. There will be limited services available in the city and some time for as all residents return and settle in. There will not be supports like evacuation centers and accommodations available in Yellowknife for evacuees from other NWT communities. I know that the process of going home will be challenging and stressful for some residents. We will do our best to answer your questions and provide as much information and support as we can throughout this process. Thank you for your patience over the past several weeks. Please continue to be patient and kind with one another. Please seek your information from credible sources like the GNWT Public Safety page. This is where all of the most current information is shared. I want to again thank the Government of Alberta, Manitoba, British Columbia, and the communities within these provinces for opening their doors to thousands of NWT residents during this evacuation. We will be forever grateful for your support during this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Thompson. And now I'll turn it over to Minister Green to make remarks.
Thank you, Aggie. Good afternoon, everyone. As we plan our return to Yellowknife, Delo, and Detta, I want to ask for something important. That's to be kind to each other. These past weeks have been really tough. The one thing we all share is the feeling of anxiety of being forced out of our homes and the stress and worry that comes from that. That includes people who provide essential services who've been working longer hours than usual for weeks on end. So please, let's be understanding and kind. Now I want to turn to what you can expect from the health and social services system over the next month. When the evacuation order ends, Stanton Territorial Hospital will be able to provide basic life-sustaining services, including emergency care, some surgical capacity, inpatient beds, and support services. Primary care, public health, home care, and day sheltering services will also be available, also with limited capacity. Our dedicated child and family services teams will support families, while our mental health and wellness teams are working to expand services for those affected by the trauma of this event. Please be patient because of our limited capacity. We estimate it'll take us a month to reach full capacity, and that includes repatriating all the inpatients who were transferred to Alberta and British Columbia. Our ability to provide services depends on having our dedicated staff back on the ground. We'll bring services online as quickly as possible, and timely updates will continue to be provided to the public. Our services depend on people to operate them, and these dedicated individuals will be returning at different times and with varying levels of readiness due to their own experience as evacuees. The 1 month time frame involves not only reinstating services, but also normalizing them. That means returning to wait times and appointment available similar to what we experienced before the emergency. For those advised not to return immediately, such as people needing dialysis, chemotherapy, IV therapy, or those in an advanced stage of pregnancy, we're working on transition supports and will bring necessary services online as soon as possible. To families of individuals in long-term care or admitted as inpatients, we understand the wait is challenging. We'll work diligently to bring them back quickly and safely, although it may take some time due to the complexity and safety considerations involved. Stay informed about the health and social services supports available by visiting the NTHSSA's website, where you can find a full rundown of available services and programs. In closing, I want to express my thanks to everyone who has put in tireless efforts to safeguard our communities and keep our essential services running. Your unwavering commitment has played a significant role in making our return home possible. I'd also like to express my appreciation to those who continue to dedicate their efforts to protecting Fort Smith and Hay River. To the residents of those communities, I want to emphasize that we will keep our lines of support open with our partners in the South while you're away, and we eagerly await your return. I want to express my deep gratitude for everyone's patience, understanding, and resilience during these tough times. I'd now like to ask Mayor Rebecca Alty to make her remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Phase 5 is set to begin on Wednesday, September 6th. I know some folks asked why release it on Friday afternoon. Honestly, in this emergency, there's no weekdays or weekends or stat holidays. Every day is the same. Get up, work, eat, go to sleep, repeat the next day. If we could have finalized the plan earlier in the day, we would have released it earlier. But as we've always said, when more information was available, we were going to share it. It's important to note, on September 6th, residents are coming back in the reverse order of the evacuation. So the general public who require minimal supports will be welcomed back first, and residents who need more healthcare and/or shelter supports would come back when services are ready and available for them. So please, as the minister just mentioned, if you have special healthcare needs, before returning home, please consult the GNWT's public notice regarding NTHSSA's limited services. When the city and the YKDFN issued the re-entry plan with dates yesterday, it was issued with a big caveat: Mother Nature and her unpredictable nature. That caveat will remain until the end, but we didn't want to delay releasing the plan because the plan will always be subject to change if fire forecasts or conditions change, particularly as Highway 1 is key to a safe return. As we've seen throughout this summer and previous summers, the highway will open when it's safe. This can be intermittent, so watch the GNWT's infrastructure website closely and make sure to always drive to the conditions, like when you were evacuating. We'll also release more information over the coming days, but here's a few points to consider as you prepare to return home. If you're driving, be prepared for delays, have some food and water. Be aware that there will be limited capacity in Northern Alberta communities for such things like hotel rooms. It's also important to be safe. There will be increased traffic, and as we head into the fall weather, we're getting dawn and dusk earlier, so watch out for animals, particularly bison, on the road. And make sure you have your headlights on at all times, and again, drive to conditions. If you're flying home, the city is getting ready for your arrival and organizing transportation for you to get home or back to Sir John, including taxi vouchers, buses, and ambulances for people with mobility issues. And whether you're flying or driving, remember that you're leaving communities that are fully operational and functional, and you'll be coming back to basic services. As everyone arrives home, it will take time to get back to fully normal. There will be limited healthcare services, not all city facilities will be open, there will be limited cashiers at stores, and more. If possible, try to be prepared to be as resilient as you can for the first 72 hours. What does that mean? If you have a prescription or need medicine, consider bringing enough back so you don't have to head to the pharmacy on your first day back. If you generally pay by cash, consider bringing back some emergency cash. I recognize this isn't financially possible for everyone, and by no means is it required. But for those who can and who use cash frequently, you'll be decreasing the pressure on the banks for the first few days. If you're driving, consider bringing back 72 hours worth of non-perishables. The more people who are able to do this, the less of a rush there will be at the grocery store. Again, these are just a few things to consider. If you can do them, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. There are resources in town and there will be resources available, but these are just a few steps you can take to avoid potential lineups. Finally, as folks may have seen on social media, we have some incredible fire breaks in our community now. The fire breaks that were created were based on the advice of the wildfire experts. They have changed the landscape of our community and in some cases added to our trail network. But their primary and most important purpose was to protect our community this year and for years to come. So brace yourself for change and remember their ultimate purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Alty. And now we are going to get an EMO update from Jay Boast.
Thank you, Aggie, and thank you to all of you for joining us on a Saturday afternoon. I have some important details to share with you about many of the things that you've just heard, but I think it's very important that I start my remarks today by saying thank you to the people of Alberta, Manitoba, and the Yukon for their generosity, hospitality, but most of all, the supports that they have provided to NWT evacuees. From the service provided by the provincial and territorial governments, as well as the emergency management agencies, to nonprofit organizations, all of the hundreds of volunteers, support agencies, and even the individual residents who have shown us such kindness, empathy, and caring since the beginning when NWT residents began to arrive. We have learned so much from you, and we cannot express in words the magnitude of our gratitude. Today, we are here to focus on the re-entry details for the residents of Yellowknife, Delo, and Detta, and the Ingram Trail. And now that we have a target date, it is important that we share those details. Having said that, I want to acknowledge that there are many communities who are still under evacuation orders and who are waiting for the day that they are told that going home is on the horizon. We are still in an emergency and there is still work to do to get all of our residents, including those from the South Slave, home when it is safe to do so. And so as residents from the North Slave prepare to return home, I do want to remind you that we are still currently under an evacuation order and that it will be downgraded to an alert, an evacuation alert, but that, as has been said many times, conditions can change rapidly. So you will need to pay attention to messaging even after you are home. I also want to stress that we all have a role to play during the re-entry phase. It is important to bring your attention to the fact that as of today, the evacuation order has been updated, as the minister mentioned, to ensure that there are no issues for essential workers who need to bring their families home with them can make it home safely. While the GNWT, the City of Yellowknife, and the YKDFN are planning and working to make sure everyone knows what to expect for the return home, individual residents also need to start their planning as well. And in doing so, we are asking you to plan to be safe and prepared and not to prioritize being first. Safety and preparedness is what we are asking from you. Today, I have details to share about how best to get home and the associated risks that we want you to consider. Re-registration for flights was announced earlier and mentioned by the minister. It is now available both online, through the public safety webpage, and over the phone. Pre-registration is the first step for us to develop passenger lists for re-entry flights. And from there, appropriate aircraft will be booked based on the need in establishing flight hubs across Alberta, as well as in Whitehorse and Winnipeg. Pending evacuation orders being lifted, flights will depart as early as Wednesday, September 6th, and continue for an estimated 5 days. We will update that if the need arises when the time comes. We do ask that you please register, though, as soon as possible so we can get a sense of how many flights may be needed and to help determine if there is a need to extend any of the accommodations. Once an evacuee's flight information is available, it will be sent to them at least 24 hours before departure via email or text. They will also receive information on ground transportation from the evacuation or reception centers to the assigned airport. In the case where email or text are unavailable, information will be provided to evacuees over the phone. Evacuees from evacuated South Slave communities are asked to remain where they are rather than to travel to Yellowknife. Given the limited services that have been mentioned in the city as residents return, No supports will be available in the form of evacuation centers or evacuation accommodations. So now let me speak to the current evacuee accommodations. The GNWT has arranged for current accommodations to be extended until September 8th for those who need it, and we are currently working on longer-term solutions for after September 8th for anyone who, due to health reasons or special extenuating circumstances, need to stay longer. More details on an extension from September 8th will be shared in the coming days. For those who are traveling by road, the government of Alberta has advised that the Northwest Territories evacuees who start traveling north before the evacuation order is lifted, they want to make it clear that you are responsible for your own accommodations if you leave before the evacuation order is lifted. You will be responsible for accommodations, food, and other expenses. You should also be mindful that there are limited accommodations in High Level and Grand Prairie, given many of our South Slave evacuees are being supported in those locations already. Also, once anyone begins their travel, even after the order is lifted, you are not allowed to re-register at any of the Alberta reception centers. If you arrive at the highway checkpoints before the evacuation order is lifted, you will not be allowed through unless you are on the essential worker list. Once you start your travel by road, once the order has been downgraded to an alert, you need to carefully plan your trip, thinking about your individual needs. You need to ensure your vehicle is ready for the drive home, and to be prepared, you should be bringing basic supplies to last 72 hours just in case. Ensure that you have enough fuel, food, water, and other supplies for the drive ahead. Given the current fire conditions along Highway 1, it may close with short notice, or you may experience long delays. Check highway conditions, know when and where you can buy fuel before you drive, know where rest stops are located, and have a plan for dealing with long delays. Also, please be aware that Becheco will not have services available for gas or food if residents are delayed in the drive up.